The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry bush, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your slave, who has just come in from ploughing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you not rather say to him, 'Prepare supper for me, put on your apron and serve me while I eat and drink. Later you may eat and drink'? Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done.'"
Well, Alison, quite a challenging reading, really. Jesus seems to be quite hard on the disciples here.
Certainly does.
Yeah,
when he was talking to them, and it certainly ends very harshly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sort of ends in rather... It might help perhaps to put a little bit of context of this reading, because it's quite a short gospel reading, and then so it's often just sort of put that Luke's put some sayings together, but Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, and it seems like he's been saying some pretty tough stuff about their need to forgive and not to be a stumbling block to other people. And it almost seems like they sort of suddenly dawns on them how tough this is, and then they sort of come out with a sort of plaintive, increase our faith. Increase our faith.
And we do know from the reading it's not the size of the faith, but it's having a faith in a big God, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can be a small faith, but it's what you've got the faith holding on to.
I think you have that lovely picture of the mulberry tree sort of getting up, and I can think of a lovely mulberry tree I know, which is quite a big tree, and then you have all these squashy fruits all over the ground, but you can imagine this tree sort of getting up and going jumping into the sea. But I think it's sort of, that's sort of quite a dramatic, probably quite humorous illustration, but as you say, it's that even a mustard seed, the mustard seed was the tiniest, the tiny little seed, and that tiny seed of faith, and yet God can take that and make something of it. Yeah, so I hope that would have been a sort of encouragement to them, sort of chivvy them along. But this next bit is quite sort of the story about the slaves, and they do what they're meant to do, and Jesus sort of seems to say to them, well, that's all you should be doing, don't take any credit for it. That's quite hard, isn't it?
Yeah, is it about doing things for love, though, not for rewards? They're doing it because they want to do it, they have to do it.
I'm actually thinking about an old lady I went to see once and was chatting to, and she knew she was getting quite near sort of death and things, and talking about things, and she sort of kept saying to me, I hope I've been good enough, and it was sort of trying to reassure and say, well, actually that's not what it's about. We don't have to sort of try and you get a little bit of this feeling here, that they're sort of piling up the credit.
Yeah, exactly, and it's all going back to that little bit of faith, isn't it? Just the little bit.
Yeah, and hanging on to that faith. Yeah. It's still quite challenging, isn't it? Because I think we've got quite an emphasis nowadays on wanting to encourage self-esteem, and Jesus seems to come at them sort of, you're worthless slaves. I mean, you've only done what you've asked to, and think with your work with children, so often we're trying to
encourage them all the time. We say how special they are, and they do such good things, don't they? Very positive. So doesn't seem. In
some ways, this seems quite harsh to sort of be coming back and sort of saying, "Well, you've only done what you should be doing. Get on with it," sort of thing. But but I suppose perhaps we need to balance it out with all those other statements Jesus says, where you take that little bit of faith and grow it. Yeah, I think I want to balance this story with one which I think we talked about just a few weeks ago, which was in Luke 12, which was another story about masters and slaves, and I quite like that one as well, which actually has, I think the master comes back from the wedding banquet late after midnight. Right. The slaves have stayed up, haven't they?
They have,
and then Jesus turns that one round and says, actually this time the master asks the slaves to sit down and he waits on them.
Oh, it's a lovely picture, isn't it? After having waited all that time, and
so they were faithful.
Them. They did have faith.
And that must have been just so revolutionary, this idea that the master would wait on the slaves in that society. And I suppose we think of Jesus saying, I've come not to be served but to serve.
That's right.
So I think with that gospel, I'd probably like to get the other story with it as well.
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps so we can have our cake and eat it as well.
Yeah.
Perhaps we might draw that to a close today. Yeah, thank you.